Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Roseville Wrecking Ball. The Roseville Wrecking Ball.
Joshua Shrum. He is a very talented steward, very knowledgeable.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball. This is one of those podcasts where I listen to every episode. I love what he's putting out there.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball. Josh Shrum.
Parcels of Knowledge. Does a fantastic job with that podcast.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball. He is an Article 8 scholar, and thank God. We need Article 8 scholars right now.
Tune into the Parcels of Knowledge podcast while you're on the route. That's the mailman's playbook, brother.
Good morning and welcome back to Parcels of Knowledge, that podcast dedicated to delivering knowledge to the city letter carrier with your host, the Roseville Wrecking Ball. Yes, today is Wrecking Crew Wednesday, and once again we have grown in numbers. But first, let's talk about Orlando Gonzalez. We should be having a Saturday with Shrum this Saturday, and it's going to feature Orlando Gonzalez, the Region 15 NBA candidate for the CLC. As per usual, I need questions, please. We want to determine whether these candidates are fit for the position that they're running for, and as such, they are subject to the scrutiny of the membership. Membership, you have the ability to submit to me each and every question you would like to hear. You can ask silly ones, you can ask hard ones, you can ask easy ones. But ask questions based on how you feel this candidate needs to fit the criteria. I haven't got enough yet. I got some. Please send them to rosevillewreckingball@yahoo.com. That is rosevillewreckingball@yahoo.com. And that will be in the description as well. Now, as today is Wrecking Crew Wednesday, I would have to explain that the Wrecking Crew is my Patreon members. If you are interested in becoming a member of the Wrecking Crew, please feel free to go check out the Patreon, where if you feel like this podcast can provide you value, you can donate anywhere between $1 and $50 a month based on the value you think it provides and the amount that you feel like you can contribute. And that money will go towards reinvesting into the community, such as giveaways for stewards or for the Wrecking Crew, and also paying for my podcast equipment and the monthly subscription fees that I have to pay for. This was started because originally, for a period of 3 months, I had advertisements in which I got some comments saying, hey, I do want you to be sustainable, but I also don't want to hear the advertisements. So a good friend of mine gave me the idea, and I went with it. And we have a badass group of individuals who are part of the Wrecking Crew. That's right. Every Wednesday is Wrecking Crew Wednesday, and we will honor every individual who decided to join the Wrecking Crew. We had 14 members last month. Now we have 16. So, of course, we've grown in numbers, and I love that. Last time I said, let's make that 15, boys. And, of course, you guys outdid yourself, made it 16. So, without further ado, let's announce these badass individuals who are keeping this union what it needs to be. Rick Steiner, E.R., Tom Perry, Philip DeGilio, Chris Angeloff, Amy Tyvand, Ryan Ackers, Edmund DeVore, Miziel Guzman, Paul Suranowski. Hopefully I said that right this time, Paul. Let me know. Jamie Gregory, Neil Beckman, Kenneth Grigsby, and our two brand new members, Benjamin Schalhaas and Joni Weber. All right. I appreciate everything you do.
Get some help.
And I really do appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. I'm not lying here. And for that reason, I will allow the Wrecking Crew to start picking the topic every Wednesday for what we want to be educated about. They have chosen the topic of Article 8.5F, refresher this time, with a little bit of interpretive issue mixed in. They have chosen this topic for Wrecking Crew Wednesday, which I will make a regular thing. So that will be a benefit of being on the Wrecking Crew, is you can choose the topic in a poll for every Wednesday episode. That poll's only going to be open to the members of the Wrecking Crew. And don't forget, we also have a member that decided to make us a website. If you want to, go there, show some love. Also, don't forget to comment on the podcast. I haven't been getting any comments lately, man. Tell me what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, good, bad, or indifferent. I want to know how you feel. Now, man, lately everything's been a little bit difficult. My blood pressure is a little high. I don't know if you know this or not, but my heart rate's usually very high. So when things happen, it gets my blood boiling a little bit more. And last night, well, it's actually not night, it's 2 p.m., but you know me, I'm an early bird. We had not Rick Steiner, we had the PMG, Postmaster General, talk to Congress, testified under oath. And man, one thing is crazy is we're living in an upside down world right now where my own NBA's office is telling me, oh, well, you know what? You're reading the law wrong. That 6-day delivery doesn't mean 6 days to every office, that the Postal Service just has to deliver 6 days a week. And then guess what? Listen here what Mr. Steiner has to say when he was testifying under oath before Congress.
Fourth, we're mandated by law to deliver to every address, more than 170 million of them, 6 days a week. This leads to 71% of our delivery routes being financially underwater. If we're expected to deliver 6 days a week to every location, someone needs to pay for that. We're mandated by law to deliver to every address, more than 170 million of them, 6 days a week. This leads to 71% of our delivery routes being financially underwater. If we're expected to deliver 6 days a week to every location, someone needs to pay for that. Fourth,
yep. So the mandate is by law to deliver to every address 6 days a week. Wow. Exactly the same definition my NBA has been telling me, not NBA's office has been telling me is incorrect. What the fuck is going on here? The Postmaster General himself is taking the same position as me, and my NBA's office is saying, no, that's incorrect. We're going to lose that in arbitration.
Stop it. Get some help.
These guys are insane.
Oh shit, not good.
I just can't believe it. I think I'm going to shut up about it, though, but come on. We can do better than this. When the own goddamn Postal Service is taking the same position of you, as you saw, I've been saying a long time that the OIG has already said that this is a violation of our policies and the law, and now the fucking Postmaster General is testifying the same. How can you tell me that those people are reading it wrong? They're the ones who has to actually undertake the obligation that we're given to be mandated to deliver to every address. What is going on here? Things are backwards lately. I can't believe it. But I'll shut up. Without further ado, let's get into the main topic of education because I've already spent too much time on this bullshit. So, well, before we move on, I do want to talk about, I will be doing a JCam giveaway, physical JCam copy. 2 members of the Wrecking Crew will get it. And 1 member who decides to subscribe to my YouTube channel, I'm going to select 1 person from the YouTube subscribers and 2 people from the Wrecking Crew. So those are the 2 ways you can enter into the contest to get this JCam physical copy. It'll be sent to your address as long as you claim it. I still haven't had the other 2 people claim the other giveaway. 1 person has. I haven't sent it to him yet, but I will very shortly once I find out who the replacements are for the 2 people who didn't claim it yet. So, that being said, 1 more contest, JCam giveaway. If you want a copy of the physical JCam, it'll be bound and really nice, laminated, I believe. it will be sent to you. You have to either be a member of the Wrecking Crew or alternatively be a subscriber on my YouTube channel. That's Parcels of Knowledge on YouTube. So that will be announced on our Facebook as well. Now, moving on, let's talk about Article 8.5F. This is one of my favorite topics. Article 8 is something I love to do. And if you haven't seen my prior episodes on Article 8, I do have plenty. I think I'm going to cite them in the description. But Article 8.5F can be found on the bottom of page 819 of the new JCAM, which I think it doesn't really change very much from JCAM to JCAM in terms of the pages. But 8-19, turn to 8-19, it's a limitation. It's a very particular limitation section that only applies to certain people. So let's read it. Excluding December, no full-time regular employee will be required to work overtime on more than 4 of the employee's 5 scheduled days in a service week, or work over 10 hours on a regularly scheduled day, over 8 hours on a non-scheduled day, or over 6 days in a service week. Let's repeat that. Excluding December, no full-time regular employee will be required to work overtime on more than 4 of the employee's 5 scheduled days in a service week, or work over 10 hours on a regularly scheduled day, over 8 hours on a non-scheduled day, or over 6 days in a service week. So there's 4 stipulations to this, and they should sound familiar because those 4 situations are the exact 4 situations where a regular would earn penalty overtime. And that's part of the services argument, which we're going to talk about later. It says here that Article 8.5F applies to both full-time regulars and full-time flexible, so no PTFs, no CCAs. The only 2 exceptions to the work hour limits provided for in this section are for full-time employees during the penalty overtime exclusion period. They oftentimes call that December, but just remember that's not the entire month of December. It's during a period which is determined by the service each year. It's a period of 30 days, I believe. Sometimes it starts in November, ends December 27th or something like that. And the second exception is for full-time employees on the ODL during any month of the year. Both paid leave hours and work hours are considered work for the purposes of administration of Article 8.5F. And then it talks about 8.5G, which is the limitation of 12 and 60. But regardless, okay, we got 8.5F. That is the definition. But there is one caveat, and unfortunately, this is the one thing that me and Brian Renfro actually agree with, unfortunately. And yeah, it got me surprised one day when he posted this response on Facebook, and it was like, holy shit, me and him think the same on one thing. What's wrong with me? But one caveat that we're going to take this regionally, because region by region we do this differently, and the vast majority of them disagree with the way me and Brian think. And that's because a lot of times people who are on the overtime work assignment list, which was created after Article 8.5F, they want overtime. So if you turn to page, let's see, the top of page 823 of the JCAM, it talks about the work assignment list, and it refers to a lot of the things that they agreed to in the creation of the work assignment list, or otherwise known as OWA. It says, full-time letter carriers who sign the work assignment list are considered to be available for up to 12 hours per day on a regularly scheduled day. However, the work assignment agreement recognizes that it is normally in the party's best interest not to require employees to work beyond 10 hours per day, and management should not require work assignment volunteers to work beyond 10 hours unless there is no equally prompt and efficient way to have the work performed. Now, when they use efficient, they're specifically talking about pay rate. Efficient in the sense of, how much it costs. And what that means is there sort of is a pecking order, as far as I'm concerned. It says essentially that Article 8.5F applies to work assignment agreement people only in the regard of 10 hours per day. It says normally they should not require them unless you have no other equally prompt and efficient way to have the work performed. Throw out efficient because we all know, yes, you're more efficient at prompt. You're going to be there already. You're more efficient at your route. But efficient is actually in the sense of penalty versus overtime. So if an ODL is in an overtime status and an OWA would have to work penalty, technically management should assign the ODL the overtime first. And in not doing so would necessitate a missed opportunity. Now take that one with a grain of salt because your members are not going to like to hear that. You know, the OWA signs the list for a reason. They claim that their overtime is their overtime, no matter what, whether it's penalty or not, because they're forced to be available up to 12 hours per day. But, even Region 6 does that. When I brought that up in one of the trainings, the RAA was like, yes, you're right, but we don't do that here because our OWAs want their overtime, so that's the way we've always done it. So take that with a grain of salt. I just wanted to talk about that particular caveat to the Article 8.5F. So, to recap, Article 8.5F is a violation that occurs when a regular employee works into penalty that is not on the overtime list and is not in December. That being said, typically, when you file this type of grievance, you would ask for a cease and desist. An exemplary issue statement would be, did management violate Article 8.5F of the National Agreement in their scheduling of overtime on this particular day? And if so, what is the remedy? The particular day you would put the date, not what I just said. And an exemplary remedy would be originally to start off with cease and desist. But as time progresses, if it becomes a constant violation that is egregious, of course, you would apply the rule of escalated remedies and you would ask for an escalation. Typically in Roseville and in many other places, this has come in the form of maybe a 50% premium. Other branches I've seen also gives away missed opportunities for an Article 8.5F violation, which typically I would do that for improper mandation. I think I should be doing it for Article 8.5F, but that's not how we've ever handled it, so I don't know if I can change it all of a sudden. But yes, you could pay the ODL a missed opportunity because who should have got that overtime? Not the regular. It should have been given to an ODL. Now, of course, missed opportunities are an extension of entitlement to a particular thing. So you have to explain how that ODL is entitled to that overtime, which in the case of ODL versus ODL, there is no entitlement because there is no pecking order. But in the case of non-ODL versus ODL, there is an entitlement because there is a pecking order. Article 8.5F does particularly state that no regular should be doing those things. So if there is if there is an alternative, they should have gave it to the ODL. Now, this brings me into the interpretive issue because recently National, on the Postal Services side, headquarters, National, whatever you want to call it, has put out an interpretive issue on this particular thing. And their argument is that the penalty receive is the exclusive remedy of the violation of Article 8.5F, and that any escalation beyond that is inappropriate. Now, for some reason, regions everywhere have been lumping in 8.5D, 8.5G, all kinds of other issues, but the particular issue at hand is management simply stated that they don't like the fact that they get penalty plus an additional remedy, that it's inappropriate. So this is not an issue with any other particular Article 8 issue. So just remind yourself that they shouldn't be held in abeyance unless it's Article 8.5F in particular, and it has to have an escalated remedy. Now, the 50% premium that it usually starts off with in escalation, I have realized is actually not the way to go. And it's for this particular reason. Now, somebody did tell me that they were on the wrecking crew and they made the comment, hey, maybe you should talk about how people should file 85F separately with 85G and every other Article 8 issue. I agree, but I've been saying that in the podcast forever. If you've listened to prior episodes, there's one thing I learned from my business agent that I will never forget and I think is absolutely great advice. That's one thing I can say is everybody gives good advice. Sometimes we don't agree on everything. But David Mudd particularly taught me one day. I was new. I was doing all the Article 8 issues weekly. So I would do a weekly grievance where I would pay everybody based on the particular anything Article 8 related in one grievance. And David Mudd was like, whoa, wait a second. Stop doing that. And I'm like, why? They're not giving me my time. You know, I need to do something to make this quicker. And he said, no, you need to separate each grievance into its simplest form. And what that means is basically, if it's a daily violation, for example, Article 8.5F is, don't do a weekly one. Don't lump it with any other Article 8 violations or any other violation in general, but make it in its simplest form. So if they violate Article 8 on July 10th, well, then file a grievance for Article 8 on July 10th, Article 8.5F. And then if it was on the 11th, file a separate grievance for the 11th. And if they also violated G on the 11th, that's 3 grievances, not 1. And that's really good advice because if you are to explain something in arbitration or to defend it or to prove your point, it's going to be much easier to prove the events of July 10th than it would be the entire week. And additionally, on top of that, sometimes when you lump it together and one thing is a failure, like for example, it turns out they didn't actually violate Article 8F on the 11th, you just thought they did, and they determined that they did not, well, then you could lose the entire grievance. So, yes, I agree with you. That was our new member, Benjamin Shalhaas. I agree with you. But I have been saying this for a long time, but I agree we also need a refresher. That when you file a grievance, it needs to be in its simplest form. So separate Article 8.5F with everything else. That way it doesn't get lumped into the interpretive issue and be put into abeyance, unfortunately, and have to wait unnecessarily. Now, just because there's an interpretive issue right now doesn't mean you shouldn't be filing. You should file each and every violation. As long as there's a violation, file it. And just because there's an interpretive issue on the escalated remedy doesn't mean you shouldn't be asking for one. Do what's right for the membership, regardless of what's going on. We're going to see what happens with this interpretive issue. I don't have a lot of confidence that our fearless leader is going to do the right thing. Unfortunately, they've been teaching us for a long time that they don't like escalated remedies, that they're worried about the Postal Service sustainability. I hope they don't sell us out, but only time will tell. And if they do, I'll be pressing Article 10 charges for certain. One way or another, I hope many people will. We need to get this guy out of office, Brian Renfro. He's something that really hurts us. But in relation to Article 15, I do want to mention this before I let you guys go. That this simplest form theory has got me going on something else. In the past, even though I take every grievance to its simplest form, I have lumped in Article 15 when it comes to noncompliance in terms of determining whether or not this particular violation needs to be escalated. If you file a grievance over and over again and don't put Article 15 in there, I was under the opinion that then you can't escalate it. But as of recent, when I got my most recent Article 15, I think, and this goes along with the 50% being the remedy that I think is weaker, I think with Article 15, we need to be doing 2 separate grievances every time. So if they violate Article 8.5F, file a grievance for 85F. And then you could have 85F particular escalations, but I think it's more appropriate to separate the issues, because oftentimes when you send it to Step B, they start doing boneheaded things like, oh, well, this is 85F, and your prior resolutions for noncompliance were about paying remedies on time. So they're two separate issues, and they need to be separated so your escalation is not warranted. I disagree. I think each and every time management violates the contract, and more particularly violates an agreement that we have already signed, they claim that they're going to stop. Whether it's cease and desist or not doesn't matter, but they sign an agreement saying they're going to stop, and then they don't. That's a violation of Article 15.3a, which states that management must bargain in good faith. So I think it's more appropriate, and sometimes it might work out better, sometimes it might work out worse in terms of the amount of money you get, but I think it's most appropriate that we separate them so that Step B doesn't do their bullshit. You know, you can say, okay, Article 85F, cease and desist that, and secondarily file a second grievance saying you have signed in the past that you would not violate Article 8.5F, you did it again. So this is our new... First of all, you would start with the cease and desist, then do a new escalation eventually over time. And do it for every single issue. Lump it into Article 15.3a and file a separate grievance. Then you can get a rolling particular lump sum, which is, I think it's better than 50%, because when you file Article 85F and you do the 50%, oftentimes my remedies end up being 75 clicks, which makes it like $10. If you get a lump sum, you can start with $25, much higher than 10, when still not deserved, but then I've already escalated to 50. Now that's going to be much more worthy than the $10 you're getting. In some cases where the violations are extreme, a percentage premium might be more appropriate, or alternatively might pay the carrier more money. But I think all in all, in terms of the amount of money you'll be getting your carriers, I think doing it this way would actually pay off a little bit better. With that being said, I think I've basically went over everything I need to go over. For those of you who might not remember, let's just end with a recap of Article 85F, all right? 85F is the situation where it excludes December, and no full-time regular employee will be required to work overtime on more than 4 of the employee's 5 scheduled days in a service week, or work over 10 hours on a regularly scheduled day, over 8 hours on a non-scheduled day, over 6 days in a service week. It applies to both full-time regulars and full-time flexibles, which we don't very much have any more full-time flexibles. The only 2 exceptions would be the exclusionary period of December and full-time employees on the ODL during any time of the year. This has lumped in the OWA because they're a form of the ODL, but it does not apply to 10 hours in a day should apply to the OWA in general. If there are alternatives that are under a lower or the same pay rate. Also, when you file these, typically you would ask for a cease and desist. It would warrant escalation. There is an interpretive issue on the escalation of this issue, which would hold your case in abeyance. I completely disagree with what the Postal Service is doing, but it is what it is, and we're subject to the system that we're in. Before I let you go, make sure that you send me some questions for Orlando Gonzalez from Region 15, MBA candidate. He did lose his job at the business agent's office for running for business agent against his current business agent. And that in particular is interesting enough, but any questions will do. I need them. Please send them to rosevillewreckingball@yahoo.com. I'm going to put that in the description. Hopefully you learned something valuable today. And as always, have a good day.
If these guys are getting educated, we will be in big trouble.
like a bag of wet catalogs, but you don't gotta take it. You strap on the elbow of education, dig it?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Roseville Wrecking Ball. The Roseville Wrecking Ball.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball is an Article 8 scholar, and thank God, we need Article 8 scholars right now. The grievous genius is the Roseville Wrecking Ball, doing amazing work.
Tune into the Parcels of Knowledge podcast while you're on the route. That's the mailman's playbook, brother.